Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I am Jordan, and today we're going to look at a bottle of bourbon called Noble Oak. It's by the Edrington Group. They're parts of many different whiskeys. In fact, they're a shareholder in the Wyoming Whiskey Company here in Wyoming, and they produce some really interesting things. If you know anything about them, one of the main name brands that they are associated with is Macallan. So Macallan Scotch, one of the top names in Scotch. And as such, they do a lot of stuff with sherry casks. So Noble Oak is a double oak bourbon whiskey, and it is finished with a sherry oak stave in the final cask. Brings on kind of some interesting characteristics. We'll go over that as we kind of get into this bottle. Not super expensive. We were able to pick that up here in Wyoming for $24.79. So nothing real major. This bottle was specifically priced to try and allow more accessibility to it, so that more people can get into it. I mean, this is not a high dollar brand, but it's a really nice brand, and I think you'd really like it. So we'll get into that a little bit. For starters here, it is 45% ABV, so 90 proof. Let's see, what else do we need to know about this? So this says distilled in Indiana, so this bourbon is most likely an MGP product, and then they take and do their own finishing, aging method to it. So it says bottled by Noble Oak Spirits Company, Newtown, Ohio. So there you go. A couple of things about it. So let's get into this bottle and see what we can find. Has some nice color to it. Can't go wrong with that. Oddly enough, so my wife and I picked up this bottle the other day, and we went into the liquor store. She's like, "Hey, I really want to go out. Let's go buy a couple of bottles of whiskey." So we ended up buying two different bottles, and oddly enough, both this bottle and the other bottle that we picked up, which is the Naked Grouse, part of the Famous Grouse lineup. It's its own offshoot brand, and the interesting part about it is both this bottle and that bottle is under the Edrington Group brand name. So they own part of both of those bottlings. So it was completely, random that we picked those bottles. And I mean, they were new bottles into the store, I assume, because they kind of both jumped out at us as being something we hadn't seen before. So that will be the next review. I just found it interesting that we happened to grab two bottles and they both happen to be by the same company. So that was kind of unique. Anyways, so that'll be the next review that I do here. So on the nose, it's very, very sweet, very sugary, caramel, very sugar caramel with just a hint of vanilla on the backside. I get a little bit of oak and that sherry, kind of that dark fruit note, sits in the back of the glass. The ethanol is really tamped down in the nose. And the more I sit and kind of swirl it and let it open up, that dark fruit really rounds out and comes forward. Very nice. That's a very nice nose. On the palate, so those dark fruit notes, very forward, like dark plum. And then, so that the fruit comes forward, but then it has a quick sweet that follows it in, so you can kind of pick up that caramel really quick. That caramel and vanilla kind of hold out those middle notes quite a bit. The sherry is very apparent. So even though it's not in a sherry cask, the sherry cask staves that they use to do the finishing work, that sherry that's held over in that wood definitely comes out in this. You can pick up a little bit in that dark fruit up front, but it's definitely pronounced as you move into the back end of the mid palate and right before you get into that finish. You just get this very sweet, nice fruit note that's in there. We got some dark fruits, maybe a little bit of apple, caramel and vanilla, very sweet through the middle. Get into that sherry. Then as you come into the finish, you get a bit of oak that kind of comes through. So being a double oak, you can pick up some of those tannins, a little bit of that barrel spice that's in there. But all the flavors are very creamy, very rounded. Nothing's really spiky until you get to the end. When you get on the finish, there's a little bit of spice that's a little bit spiky in there, but just a very nice, well-rounded flavor profile. It does have a little bit of a dryness on the very end of the finish. So now here it's been a couple of seconds since I've had my sip, starting to dry out the tongue like a nice dry wine would. But it also has a little bit of sugars in there too. So like that dryness is more of a texture on the tongue that I'm talking about. That tastes like you need a drink of water kind of a thing. So it's not a dry flavor; it's a dry feeling on the tongue. So that there's no oily coating your tongue kind of a mouthfeel with this. But just overall, the flavors are really, really nice. They kind of go from one to the next very smoothly. Each one's fairly well defined and unique unto itself, each of the flavors and notes, but they just kind of come together to make a really, really nice bourbon. So, if you're looking for something to try, I highly suggest picking this up. It's a very, very nice, easy sipping bourbon. Nothing real crazy out of the ordinary, but that sherry kind of adds to it, something that you'd not finding in a more traditional style bourbon. Although more and more bourbons are moving into these different types of finishes, like a sherry cask finish. So definitely check it out. Once again, $24.79 here in Wyoming, and I think it's worth every penny of it. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Check me out on bitchute and minds.com. Trying to pull away from this big tech stuff as much as possible, since the chaos that's kind of in surrounding the world right now, and how all of the sensory stuff and whatever else, like I personally don't believe any of that is justified or correct, and so I try and avoid that as much as possible. So I'm going to give my allegiance to alternative tech as much as possible. So make sure you check me out there. So on BitChute, it's LifeandWhiskey, all one word. On minds.com, it's life_and_whiskey. And yeah, if you got anything to say, drop it in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. Also, let me know what you can find a bottle of Noble Oak for in your area. Go ahead and drop that in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and have yourselves a great day.